Start, scale, exit, repeat. That's what today's show is all about. It's about cracking the code and figuring out what it is that startups do over and over and over again. And today, we're going to talk about more about that and how we can crack the code. Now, let me just give you an update about Startup Club right now as the room begins to fill. Hello, Noel and Kyle, joining us in the audience there. I just wanted to give you an update. We are about 920,000 members. We're trying to get to 1 million members by the end of this year. I also want you to know that this is actually a live show. A number of you are listening to this right now in podcast. And you might not know this, but it's a live show on Clubhouse. Every Friday, 2 o'clock Eastern, we run a show called Serial Entrepreneur Secrets Revealed. And you can come on stage. You can actually raise your hand, come on stage, and provide advice if you've got information, or ask a question. We often get a number of great speakers on stage, and today we're hoping, again, to have a number of you on stage to share with us if you've ever started a company before. We want to hear about that. We want to hear what it is that you did to make that company succeed. If you ever scaled a company before, we also want to hear from you. And if you've ever sold a company before, we definitely want to hear from you. And if you've done that over and over again, and you're in the audience, you're definitely coming on stage today because it's all about interactivity and the community. And when the community comes together, we're able to put together the most amazing contents, and that's what propels the show, the community. Now, it is our 100th episode. And Michelle, I don't know what there's been so many great episodes. I've been trying to think of my favorite ones. I remember the very first episode was done with a gentleman named Joseph Martin, and he started BoxyCharm, and he sold it for $500 million. And that's our very first episode. But it's fascinating to think that when we did that episode, where the world was then and where it is today. E-commerce was on a high. I mean, I don't know what that company would sell for today, but it would probably be, sub 100 million. Let's look at looking at the publicly traded stocks and the e-commerce industry. It's definitely taken a beating. It's a very different world we live in than when we first did that very first episode. But it's a fascinating episode to listen to, and what's interesting about all of these episodes is the principles are universal. The concepts between each show does not go out of flavor. I mean, it is something that will be 20 years from now. You can go back and listen to these shows and still get valuable lessons. What were some of your favorite shows, Michelle and Mimi?
I really, love the ones where we get a lot of member interaction. Our members have so much insight to provide. But one in particular that stands out for me is when Joe Foster, the founder of Reebok, came on. I mean, it was amazing. We actually met him, here on Startup Club on Clubhouse, and just an amazing person to come and share basically his whole life story. He's an older gentleman now, but he really talked about his family being in the business for years. The business was about to fail, and how him and his brother took over the business and grew it into the multinational, one of the top brands in the world. So that was really inspiring, and his humility was just amazing. I loved it.
Mimi, you want to take a shot at it?
Yeah, I agree. The Joe Foster session was amazing. I learned so much, not even just about business, but he has such an interesting story, him and his brother, of starting that. I also really liked our session with John Mullins, the customer funded business models one. I think we learned a lot, and that had like a lot of great tips for our audience. But I agree, Michelle. I think the ones where we get the audience involved and try to get as many tips as possible always are great. I remember the trade show one was awesome.
Yeah, and I think the one I think there are two shows that I'm thinking about right now, and just to me, I was like really nervous before starting them because I was meeting my hero, based on some of my heroes. And one of them was Jeffrey Moore, who wrote Inside the Tornado and Crossing the Chasm. And I just thought that episode, and we talked about Clubhouse and how Clubhouse was in the chasm or not in the chasm. It was fascinating to really get a sense of, of where social audio was in the technology adoption curve. And Jeffrey Moore, I mean, he's just a complete legend. The other one was Vern Harnish, who wrote Scale Up. I mean, I was just amazed that he took the invitation and came on and did a great conversation with us. And the last one was this one we did last week. It was episode 98 actually, and that was the one on with Paul Hutchinson, who he's coming back to do a follow up to that show on his actual story that they've put into a Hollywood movie. It's coming out this summer. And he ran a $50 billion real estate fund and went undercover for the U.S. government, did 47 operations, trying to free children from being sold off or
Human trafficking.
Thank you, Michelle. It's been a long night because we just got back. We just drove back in from Orlando this morning. We went to the convention, the pet show convention. But today we're talking about the secret formula. What is it that you've done to start, scale, exit, repeat? And again, if you're in the audience and you have experience in this area, you've started a business and you had success, tell us what your formula is. You scaled a business and you've had success, tell us what your formula is. You've exited and you've had success, tell us what your secret was. And if you've done it over and over again, you repeated it, we definitely want you on stage. All right, so we do have an announcement about the book, Michelle. I know you had a few questions and you wanted to sort of dig into that a little bit more.
Yeah, I mean, first, if everybody looks up to the top, I posted an article, and basically Colin here, who's on the stage, is now a contributing author in Forbes.com. And we also have a big announcement to make here. So I think, Colin, why don't you tell us, like, what is going on with Forbes? Like, I heard that there's something that we should be aware of other than this really cool article that just got published on their website about AI. So what have you been up to, and what in the heck is this, book that you worked on? Like, what is it about?
All right, so this above that article is interesting because it really talks about catching the wave. And that's one of those secret formulas. And that's part of today's session. It's like, what is it that can help you succeed in business? What makes a startup successful? And one of those things is if you can position yourself very correctly to catch a wave and move very quickly and develop a very easy product, easy to use for customers, it's very simple, then you can catch that wave and you can succeed in that market. And I actually quote Jeffrey Moore in the article and talk about that adoption curve again and how AI will be the next largest wave in the 2020s. It was dial-up in the 90s, like internet getting on the internet. It was broadband in the 2000s. It was social and apps in 2010. And 2020s are going to go down in history as being the decade of AI. And the opportunity for entrepreneurs is historic. Again, we are back at the early days of the internet. It is absolutely amazing and very fun. So if you get a chance to read that, it's a 4-minute read. It's a great article. So with respect to the book, this has been a project in the making. I mean, it seems like every one of our companies, Michelle, and our incubator take 10 years to succeed. And this book is no different. We started this book in 2012. I was asked to speak at MIT to a group of entrepreneurs at the Masters of Entrepreneurship program, ironically run by Vern Harnish. So his name's popping up again. My CEO coach asked me to come and speak after I'd sold Hostopia, a small publicly traded company, in 2008. And I worked for the company for 3 years. And in 2012, they asked me to come and do a session with the entrepreneurs. And I was really nervous about this. I mean, here I am, I'm walking in. These were not just people from just starting their business. These were very successful entrepreneurs. You had to apply to this program. You had to have a multi-million-dollar company, and they only show the best of the best speakers at these conferences or these sessions. And I was asked to speak, and I had just broke my leg skiing, believe it or not, my tibia, my fibula. So I was walking in there on crutches, probably on oxycodone. I was on for about 8 months. And I walked in there, and I had to deliver. And what I did is I reflected on my past, and I realized what it is that, because I'd done about 8 successful companies at the time. Thankfully, over the last 10 years, we've added a few to the list. But I'd done about 8 at the time, and I said, okay, what's very interesting is the patterns between all those companies with respect to the people, the money, the story, and the systems. And that at each stage, the start stage, the scale stage, the exit stage, and the repeat stage, the people, the story, the money, and the systems were all different. You had to operate very, very differently. You become a one person in a startup mode. You're basically weaning a baby. You control everything. If you want to scale your business, it's a completely different persona you need to take on as a leader. You need to lead leaders, allow others to do it. When it comes to exit, even another persona, one in which you step back from the company and you want to play yourself down. You want to check your ego at the door. And then in the repeat aspect of the book, it's all about like what it is I've done from each company to go from one to the next to the next. And it's fascinating how I started a company, or my partners and I started a company in 1992 called ComputerLink. And that was a BBS, and BBSs back then were popular, but over time they began to wane. And out of that, we launched a company called Internet Direct, an ISP. This thing called the Internet was really taking off. At the same time, we did Two Cows because we wanted to host we hosted the site called Two Cows, and we saw the demand it had. So we launched Two Cows as a commercial business, as a software download site and domain site. And then from there, we said, wow, actually it was a telecom that called us up and said, we'd like you to launch a hosting platform for us because you've done such a good job with your ISP. We had a hosting platform. Ding, 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 the bells went off, and we decided to launch a new wholesale platform called Hostopia, hosting and email. During Hostopia, I studied something called the new domain extensions, and by 2012, we launched .club. We also launched an 800-person development center out of Ukraine, which we still own today. And then from .club, we began to get into this thing called Clubhouse. People started registering .club domains like mad. And so Michelle and I jumped on and working with Ed Nussbaum, we launched Startup Club. One company led to another, which led to another, which led to another, which led to another. It was fascinating. So that's it, basically. That's the thesis. But then we added on over 100 interviews on Clubhouse, off Clubhouse, 25 different authors, experts, and unicorn billionaires, serial entrepreneurs. We've interviewed so many others to put this book together. It's a large book, I admit. It's over almost 300 pages long, but it is powerful. It is probably one of the top. I think this book has taken on Start, Scale, Exit, Repeat, something that no other startup book has done before. It's taken on a vast amount of topics and put it into one book. It really is like an encyclopedia on how to succeed as an entrepreneur. Michelle, and I know you've been working on with the team here has been working on the cover and everything, and we were very fortunate to get some really good call outs and references from some people as well.
Yeah, I mean, I want to talk about kind of your point of view on the book that I personally find very interesting, that I think is different. First of all, I want to say a lot of the content, and there's over, gosh, I don't know, Colin, but probably at least 50 subject matter experts that are referenced in the book. So it's what I thought was kind of cool is it's not just you, even though we all think you're brilliant,
Thank you. Thank you.
exposing your talking about what to do. It's a group. It's the members. It's subject matter experts talking about their experiences, their specialties, and going to market and, like you saying, scaling and Xing. But what I love is, because I've been able to read the book because I'm working on it, is your whole concept of building wealth. Now, this is something that I feel is a little different than a lot of these books that you read, right? A lot of books that you read, right, are really trying to focus on like building, massive, let's just say unicorn status companies. But you introduced to me this whole concept. I think you referred to it as laddering up. And I think it would be cool if you just, you know, give people here a little bit about that, because this is something that I think is very much achievable for people, a way for people to actually methodically build wealth. Can you talk about that a little bit, and why you chose to emphasize that in your book?
Yeah, I mean, it's a concept that's debatable. Okay, we had and it's actually in the book, but we had a dinner with Joe Foster, the founder of Reebok, and we had a discussion about this one. And he was sort of like with the idea of stick with one thing and just go all the way. And in his case, he spent the first 15 years, 20 years of his business, and he got to $9 million in sales. And it wasn't until he got his big break when Jane Fonda put on his on the shoes that they had produced, that they went from 9 million to 900 million within 4 years. Had they sold the business at that point, they obviously, in 1979, had they sold the business at that point, they would have walked away with, 10, 20 million, whatever it was that they could have got for the business. So for their strategy, sticking with it made sense. But I would say that's the exception, not the rule. The Silicon Valley highway is littered with failures. Now, I know it's becoming more pronounced now with Silicon Valley Bank. And the book talks a lot about Silicon Valley disease and how a number of startups get that disease and this obsession with venture capitalism. But the fact is, we can build businesses. Our trade as entrepreneur is a trade. So as an entrepreneur, like, we don't think of it often like that, our business is being a trade. But what is it? Are we an expert at this one business? Or can we become an expert at being an entrepreneur? And can we sharpen our sword? Can we become very, very good at that one trade? And if we can actually start to sell more, build companies, scale them, and sell them, and make a lot more money. There's multiple reasons for that. One is that it's very tax efficient to sell capital gains. In some cases, almost no taxes under some circumstances in Canada and the United States, where you can sell your business for zero capital gains. But the fact of the matter is, capital gains taxes are much lower. The second is, companies that buy you that are strategic are looking at taking your company, take .club domains, for instance, which sold to GoDaddy. They're looking at taking our company and scaling that with their current customer base or their current distribution channel. It was GoDaddy Registry that actually purchased the company. So from our perspective, we're getting paid, at Hostopia, that's publicly traded. I'm not allowed to talk about valuations with .club. But with Hostopia, they purchased us for 17 times EBITDA. Now think about that for a second. 17 times EBITDA they purchased it for. Because they had the ability to take this technology and distribute it to all of their customers. So the concept I'm trying to get into startups out there and to entrepreneurs is that consider yourself as being a trade. Consider entrepreneurship as a trade. And start, scale, exit, repeat. Start, scale, exit, take some money off the table, repeat. And that's exactly what I've done for the last 25 years. And yes, you may be able to hold out to, till you're 70 years old before you sell your first company. But your quality of life, the way you live, the fact is you're removing risk when you take assets off, when you sell assets or sell your business, you're removing the risk from your life and you're putting that into safe and secure investments, real estate, your home, extra homes, whatever it is. It's going into things that are solid and separate from your business. Because as we saw with the pandemic, as we saw with the Ukraine war, as we saw with so many things, with inflation now, with high interest rates, we cannot tell the future. But I can tell you the future will involve change, and sometimes that change can be very negative for the company that you're running. I had a friend who was running a cruise ship business called the Groove Cruise, and he was doing very, very well. He wasn't doing very, very well for the last couple of years given the pandemic. You can be out of business very quickly, no matter how strong your business is. You can have a real estate business and it can go under as well. I mean, of course, some businesses are more conservative than others. So I encourage people to think differently about who they are and how they want to make money. Are you a shampoo company or are you an entrepreneur that sells shampoos?
Yeah, I think it's, it's some advice that's meaningful to me. I like the methodology, but I see we have Jim here on the stage. And Jim, we're talking about start, scale, exit, repeat, and would love to hear, any experiences, advice, or suggestions that you have here for our members.
Sure, Michelle. Thank you for inviting me up. I've been through the business cycle a few times over, the last 40 years, and sometimes, it works well on the exit, and sometimes the exit is to get get it just behind you so you can move forward. Um, I've owned a manufacturer rep company for many years, and I sold that off to two guys that were working for me. That was a very positive situation. I also owned a manufacturing business in the mid 90s, but was affected by a flood in 97 in Grand Forks, North Dakota. That particular exit was painful because we had a severe flood up there. Regular insurance doesn't pay for all the losses that we incurred. And I was able to build the business back up over 2 years and exit it out. But I did not come out on the right side of the money deal there. But you learn from those things. And say in the last 20 years, uh, I was an importer doing direct import for the big boxes. Probably the best part of my business career was doing direct importing for the big boxes. Uh, Very little capital at risk on my part. The orders were substantial. I had a value added service that they wanted, and I was able to exit out of that to a partner at that time, and that was very good. And recently, within the last couple of years, I started, an Amazon business. I think it was 2016. And the first thing that I looked at before even jumping into that pool was there a secondary market to sell this business? And at that time, back in 2016, the multiples were pretty low. You were talking around 2x on the seller discretionary income. But I gave it a whirl. I was able to build that business up in less than 2 years and make a very nice exit. A lot of these exits that people talk about, some hit a home run, but if you can hit a double, uh, say thank you, take the money, and you can go on to the next venture. You know, a lot of people just don't realize the real payday is on the exit. And if you get a couple, two or three exits that are good, you can have some freedom, and you can move forward into other things. So that's just in a nutshell of my experience. The one thing on Clubhouse, I remember what I've joined a couple of years ago, and the aggregators were like everywhere. And I was in a couple rooms and I was talking to people. And I said, you should just talk to these people to get a conversation going to see what your business is worth. And you may want to decide, maybe it's not in the time frame that you originally set up, but it may be time to exit it. Well, a lot of these people that I was talking to, and a couple particular people that I got fairly close to, they thought their business was worth a lot more than what it really is. And now the valuations are less than it was 2 years ago. So people have to be patient. Things will turn around. I don't know if the valuations in the next couple of years will meet that of, say, 21, but it could. So the whole thing is kind of knowing when it's time to hand the keys over to another buyer and say thank you for the exit money. That's basically been kind of my life.
Well, that's interesting about this the sale timing. I mean, I often say that half the value of your exit is timing. And people look at me and they say, "Wow, how is it possible that you always seem to get out just before the crash? You sold Hostopia a month before Lehman. You sold .club before um, the the inflation and the whole chaos of last year and the stock market collapse. You sold. The fact of the matter is, and Ed knows this one. Ed's in the audience, by the way. He's the gentleman who actually started this club from the very, very, very beginning and kicked it off. So welcome, Ed. Thank you for coming and joining and listening in. And you're welcome to come on stage. Any of you in the audience, by the way, welcome to come on stage if you want to just share a thought or ask a question. But for me, Jim, the lesson I learned came from the school of hard knocks. Back in my 20s, we had a publicly traded company. It was the ISP I mentioned, Internet Direct. It was the largest in Canada. And we decided to merge it with a cable company and apply for a wireless license for all the internet for Canada. Now, I know that may sound crazy, but we actually won the license. We actually got it for free from the Canadian government. And our stock went up to well over $1 billion. And here I was, 28 years old, worth more than Mark Cuban at the time. He actually sold his company. Okay, let me finish the story first, but before I start complaining about Mark Cuban. So here I am. Life is good. 28 years old. Things are just. I mean, think about it. You're worth well over $100 million on paper, and you lived in like pretty much poverty your whole life, and here you are at this stage, this level, and something called the .com crash happened, and unfortunately, when I did the merger, I locked up my stock. I spent 10 years building a company. I couldn't spend the right time to figure out how to exit the company properly, but my stock was locked up, so I had no ability to sell the shares. And within 18 months, that $19 a share went to 6 cents a share. And I and all my employees, who were millionaires on paper, lost everything. It was absolutely horrific. I mean, I crawled up in a ball in a bed and just sort of like, a lot of it's about timing. Had we sold the company and were able to, or sold the shares when it was worth over $1 billion, I'd be the one owning the Cubans football team. I'm not joking. He sold his company for a relatively similar price to what I could have got at the time as well. And it's just, timing is half the value. And it's like startups as well. And so I think there's these times to start and these times to sell. And when things are frothy, what do I say, Michelle? I always say exit stage left. When things are going really, really good, exit stage left.
Yep.
Let other people make the profit. It's okay. Let other people make some money, right?
Let me just interject something, Colin. I had a really good friend, known him for like 30 years. Uh, Good businessman, but sometimes the greed factor sets in. He had a company, a nice sized company, was in the gift industry. They were well established, like 30-year old company that wanted to acquire Jamie's company. Jamie calls me up and he says, "Hey, this is what's going on." He shared the numbers. I told him just from my past experience what I thought his company valuation was. And, you know, basically, the guy blew the deal with the acquiring company. And lo and behold, 3 years later, he ended up liquidating his company. He walked away with zero. So sometimes you have to listen to people that have been through the battles. And also, uh, like I said, yeah, some people hit the home runs, but the doubles and singles and triples, uh, they do count because there's cash available to be put in your bank account.
Yeah, it's the serial entrepreneur disease of optimism. You know, we often think that our businesses will be worth so much more next year. It keeps getting better and better. It's always going to get better. You know, nothing bad can happen. You know, our business is worth way more than, than people think it's worth. And then we stick and we hold on, and we don't move forward. We keep ourselves captive, stuck in this sort of mode of running this company when we could have sold it. I've many other stories, but I don't want to go into another story right now. We have Ed on stage, and Ed, I don't know if you have a thought on this topic. We're excited to announce the book. Ed Forbes is publishing the book. It's being published on October 3rd, and it's called Start, Scale, Exit, Repeat. And so thrilled to have you on. It's been a long time, my friend.
Yeah, and when I saw the room title, I had to join, and I joined the room just when I was hearing all those great stories. I was about to say you should write a book, but it sounds like you already did, so even better. And yeah, to thinking that you were at the peak in a similar position as Mark Cuban, and the all that hard work, depending on the timing of the exit, can be such a big difference. So I'd love to see the whole start, scale, and exit, because that is something that you don't always need to do, but if you can time it right, makes such a huge difference to free yourself up to do something, maybe even bigger on your next swing at bat. So looking forward to what the book's about, and also your next swing of the bat, because I know these probably still have a few interesting ventures ahead of you.
Yeah, I think we have a lot on our plate right now. With our incubator, we've got about 10 companies. So Michelle and I are like just exhausted, to be honest with you. But uh, yeah, yeah, it's what's interesting, Ed, about the book too is it really is not just about my experience, my pasts, but also about the interviews we've had on Clubhouse. This book could never have come together without the community on Clubhouse, without the interviews we had on Clubhouse. And actually, I was probably closer to 50 experts, serial entrepreneurs, authors who came on this show and some other shows as well, but primarily this show where we did the interviews, and we were able to take the best of the best lessons we've learned from these experts and put those into the book. And thankfully, it's come together very nicely. The book it's very well laid out. We said we want to make a physical book fun again, and we have a number of call-outs in the book. We have golden nuggets, like over 100 golden nuggets. We have 40 illustrations that were done by an artist. They were not done by GPT. They were not done by DALL-E. They were done by an artist. Actually, I'll say the only thing that was ever done by GPT, and it was unbelievable. I took the introduction section, the little intro session, and popped that into ChatGPT. And I said, write the inside cover of the book. Give me 10 reasons to buy this book. And it was phenomenal. It took that intro and turned it into 10 reasons to buy this book that made the inside cover. So, look, I'm big on ChatGPT. I was able to, thankfully, my deadline was in November. I submitted the book in November. or first week of December, and I was able to get ChatGPT, and my prediction that AI will be in the 2020s one of the greatest changes and biggest opportunities for startups. And I was able to get that in the book. That was the last thing I put into the book, the very last thing, because ChatGPT was just blowing up at the time, and I saw the potential. So I'm happy I got that one right. But yeah, it takes about 9 months to go from submission to the book at Forbes to actually getting it published, and a lot of dates are being planned, and parties and launch parties and stuff like that. So we're really looking forward to it, and it's going to be a fun book to read from beginning to end. It'll be a great reference book to pull down when you are selling a company, or you do want to hire someone. We've got some great experts on sales. We interviewed Jack Daly. Forgot about that show, Mimi. Do you remember him, Jack Daly, who came on this this show and actually gave us a really good sales primer? We interviewed him. We interviewed another gentleman, a good friend of mine, who sold his company for hundreds of millions of dollars, and he was basically did it all by sales. We have a section on the pitch. We have Jenny Casson. Jenny Casson, do you remember her, Ed? She was doing a show. I think she might still do a show on Startup Club. She came on this show and she gave us a full course on raising money for the for your startup in the United States, and that chapter's in there as well. We have a chapter on venture capitalists. They interviewed my ex-venture capitalist, so we got his side of the story. Very, very interesting to get, years later, to get different perspectives and the perspective from the venture capitalist. And we've got it. It starts with just the very first chapter is what makes a startup successful and how do you get your first idea. And then the second chapter is about idea to action. Stuff we've talked about on this show. And I don't think this book could have come together without the community. That's one thing I will say, Ed. It's just phenomenal.
Yeah, and just to add on a little bit here, um, the book's going to be available for pre-order in the middle of April on Amazon. So we are going to be doing a lot of promotions with the publishers, Forbes, as well as Amazon and Goodreads and other sites like this. So if you want to get in or get even possibly free books, just make sure you sign up for our startup.club email, because we'll be sending those out to the list. So an opportunity for you to get the book, and we'd love for everyone to be able to get it. We are actually not doing this, believe it or not, for the money. We're doing it to help people, just like we do when we run Startup Club. And as most people know, we have over 100 blog posts, probably 200 articles, recordings, etc., on the website as well. So it's an infinite source of, you know, help and hints and tools for people that are just trying to get their business going or trying to get to the next stage of their business. So we'd love to hear anybody who wants to ask questions or share a story, or maybe you just want to like chat about what it is like to be a startup. That would be great, and we'd love to hear from you. Thank you.
Yeah, Ed, I think you were going to pop on there a minute ago before Michelle jumped on.
And I was just going to say, thank you for the additional context regarding the book. It sounds even better than I thought. So looking forward to
Yeah, one of our sayings is we do it really well or don't do it at all, right?
it.
You know that, Ed. You've seen the parties. You've come to the parties we have every year at the house. You've seen what we're doing with Startup Club. And you do the same. You have the same philosophy. Like, you came in with Startup Club with this idea of an ecosystem for individuals to come together to communicate about startups. Did you know after 2 years, Ed, your club would be the largest on Clubhouse? Did you actually know that when you set out, or is that just, I don't know. I'm not going to ever say it's luck, because you're really good at building communities.
Well,
So that's your
well,
forte.
there's always luck and there's always timing involved, but um, this theme of your book of start, scale, exit, repeat. I've done large online communities before. I started them, scaled them, exited from them, and learned the lessons along the way. So, apply those lessons to, from past large communities on different platforms to Clubhouse. And, The startup club was the community that I wanted to see exist. We all have different pieces of the same puzzle, the same entrepreneurial, different puzzle pieces of the entrepreneurial puzzle. And so the easier it is to find and connect with other people and figure out how those puzzle pieces connect, how we can learn from one another, grow together, the better it's for everyone. And so when I first hopped on Clubhouse, saw the magic of that ability to discover and connect with awesome people, and so Startup Club was just there to be the catalyst. And so, it's helped me, it's helped so many people just by making it easier people to find and connect with one another and do great startup related things together. So I'm glad that it's grown, and that early paddling, hard paddling to try to kind of catch that wave of clubhouses coming in. I'm glad it paid off. And then, the exit part of it was recognizing that I'd kind of reached the limits of my ability, but discovered awesome people who could kind of scale it to the next level. And so thank you, Colin and Michelle and the whole Startup Club team to kind of take what I started and keep it scaling. So thank you so much for that. And thanks for everyone who's helped along the way.
Yeah, and I also want to let you know too, Ed, you actually are acknowledged in the book at the end of the book, just so you know, because you have had such an impact on me and the story and the community, and it couldn't have happened. This book could not have happened, let me be very clear, without the community from Clubhouse, without the hundreds of shows we've done. Even the show we do on Thursday, we do the Complete Entrepreneur. Michelle and I are the co-hosts, but the main host is Michael Gilmore. We did a chapter in this book, and you don't see a chapter like this in a startup book. And the chapter was really about the toll of the entrepreneurial life. There's been a lot of studies that have been done. We quote a lot of studies in this book, but 72% of entrepreneurs report mental health. Sorry, self-reported mental health concerns were present across 72% of the entrepreneurs in the sample, which is double the rate of the average population. Mental health for entrepreneurs is actually a huge issue. And we don't acknowledge it because we're all type A personalities and we're all like, yeah, we're perfect. We all look like from outside, we look like we're perfect. But from inside and behind the scenes, it's far from that. So we take that topic on, and that came from that show, The Complete Entrepreneur, where we look at the human side of being an entrepreneur on that show. It's a really fun show. Every Thursday at 5 o'clock Eastern. And he does that from Australia. He gets up early in the morning and does that.
Yeah, and there's so much to what you just said. One of which is that the entrepreneurial journey can be lonely, which is another reason for Startup Club, where everyone makes similar mistakes. But if you can learn from others and quick and be in a position to know the right person to talk to, or bump into the right person in the hallways of Clubhouse or in Startup Club, things get a lot easier. And the people who are insane enough to think they might be able to make a small dent and change the world with a startup, they're it's often hard to find those people in everyday life, but Clubhouse makes it easy. And so all these things add up to hopefully making a difference. And I'm glad it's made a difference in your book, and because you've definitely made a difference in Startup Club. So I'm glad that's a mutual win.
Well, thanks for that, Ed. It means a lot, especially from you, because I know you're a perfectionist. I always get nervous at the beginning. I was so nervous when I was like in a clubhouse room with Ed at the beginning.
Yeah, it wasn't so much perfectionism as knowing that when you're in a quickly growing, scaling scenario, that especially when you're riding such a wave like Clubhouse was early on, that the small little things can add up to be really big down the line. And so if you get, a hundred or a thousand different small things right, it just makes everything easier later. And so the scaling part is, I approach it kind of like, how do you try to have that simple system and the simple set of rules that help free yourself up to kind of really make that difference. And and there's a lot of luck involved, but also we ended up with being the largest club on Clubhouse, so hopefully some of the small things added up.
Well, you don't know this, but Ed goes away once a year. Like he goes off the grid hiking in Arizona. It's Arizona, right? Nevada or
Arizona.
Arizona? Arizona. And he goes off the grid. And last year when he went, it was last year or the year before, when it was last year, I think, he goes off the grid. And Clubhouse gets hacked. All the clubs on Clubhouse get hacked. We're removed as admins. Ed, myself, everybody's removed. Somebody put themselves in as admins, and we're obviously like we're tweeting it. We're calling up the Clubhouse founders because we have their contacts, thankfully, and we were able to call them out mobile. But Ed was offline and we needed Ed to come back and help us get back online. Thankfully, they resolved it within I think 16 hours or 18 hours. But we were pretty nervous about the fact that we'd gone offline and we could not get Ed back to help us get this thing back online.
Well, that's when you know you have the good team where you can literally be off grid at the bottom of the Grand Canyon and knowing that even if things go wrong, they will somehow find a way to get back right before you have to get back and worry about it. So I'm glad that worked.
Absolutely. Absolutely. What's next, Michelle? Are we going to talk a little bit more about the book?
Yeah, so, I'm interested to know, and I'm sure some others would be too, is, um, what do starting out? I know you have these golden nuggets. Could you give a bit of advice to those that are just starting out? Like, what are the top three things that they should think about as they
Well, it's
begin?
interesting, and again, it's in the book, and Carrie Purcell and John Westveen. We had a great session on this show around launching your startup in an incubator. And John Westveen is the president of the NSU's Allen Levan Center, of which I speak monthly to a cohort of startups there. And he actually talks a lot about the benefits of working in an environment like that. Now, I think Startup Club's great, actually. I think in some ways it mimics a little bit like an incubator. You can come on stage, you can interact, you can literally come on stage and share a problem with your business, and the panel will help you solve that problem. And I think that's critical. So, but I also think the idea of actually getting into an environment, working in a co-working or an incubator, and by the way, almost every college, has centers like that. And you don't have to be a student at the college. The people in my cohort, sometimes they're older than I am. I've been around for quite a while. But the reality is, you don't have to be a student at the college. The cohorts that they run at NSU are free, cost you absolutely nothing. You get a lot of connections. They steer you in the right direction for government funding. They steer you in, they give you they do pitch competitions. You learn from lawyers. Free lawyers come in and do a session. I've got one at the Accelerators next month where a lawyer and I go in and we talk about raising funding. I do it from the entrepreneur's perspective. He does it from the legal perspective. And I actually, it was so good, the show, that cohort, we brought him on and did another show on serial entrepreneur secrets revealed. Again, within our 100 shows, we just keep getting great speakers and great content and community coming in and contributing. So joining an incubator is the first thing. I think also ideas are everywhere, and when you have an idea, don't sit back. I'll give you one last story before we get closer to the end. But my friends and I, and this is in the book as well. My business partners and I, we were in a dacha in Ukraine in 2008. And we had this problem at Hostopia. It was maybe 2007, 2006. I can't remember exactly the year. It was well before Uber or Lyft. But we had this problem as we traveled around Europe and other countries. We could not get a cab. It was very hard to get a cab. So we said, why don't we invent an app that you press a big yellow button and it'll call a cab to you and you can see the cab coming towards your location and it can pick you up. And we called it My Yellow Button. It was a .com, didn't have .club at the time, but we called it My Yellow Button. We still have the domain name today. And by the way, we had 25 employees who were working in a division building mobile apps. So, if anybody could do it, we could do it. Instead, the team at there had decided, well, we don't have enough time. We got this new game that we're working on, dot, dot, dot. And 2 years later, we're like, where's this idea? It hasn't gone anywhere, blah, blah, blah. Oh, what's this Uber? Oh, what's this? And next thing you know, obviously Uber became a multi-billion-dollar company. And I'm not suggesting that had we done that app, we would have been the Uber. But I am suggesting that if you have a great idea, don't spend 5 years, 10 years saying, oh, that was my idea. Somebody else, I could have done that. Just do it. Just launch it. Just go for it. Just get it done. When Ed, he had this idea of creating Startup Club when Clubhouse launches right away. He's like one of the first people on Startup Club. Okay, I'm just going to launch Startup Club. I'm going to launch Talk Club. I'm going to launch all these other clubs. OG Club. He became like the de facto mayor of Clubhouse, pretty much, Ed. But the fact is, if you had waited and analyzed and thought about it and sat there for 6 months, how hard would it be to have started Startup Club 6 months to a year after you started it? How hard would that be?
A lot harder. And kind of it's like the bookend to what you were talking about when I first joined the room about the timing of your exit, the timing of the entry also matters. And it's not saying you can't do it, but when the timing's right to start, be ready to start. When timing's right to exit, be ready to exit. And you never can do it perfectly, but yes, knowing that when I've done Clubhouse, it was such a magical experience. And early Clubhouse was the who's who of the Bay Area startup community and investor community. And all I knew is I wanted more of that. And so when clubs became available, I fought to get Startup Club. Indeed, I actually rejected it when I first proposed it, but kind of persevered and recognizing that as Clubhouse got bigger, that it would be harder and harder to find the people in startup community who were who were early on. And so it was kind of done more to keep that magic going, and then kind of paddling hard to try to grow it so that would be the de facto catalyst so that everyone can easily find one another and connect and grow together. And it worked. So, but yes, if I had waited, or if I was trying to do it now, it would be way more difficult. And so when you see those market opportunities emerge, that's you know that trying to wait to make it perfect is often not as good as just jumping on and figuring out as you go.
It's that catch the wave, right? It's the AI. AI is the same thing right now. Crypto and blockchain. If you're in early on, you saw what happened. I mean, Goldman Sachs isn't running the crypto world. Coinbase is. Startups just keep taking off. Look at Elon Musk with electric. You got to move quickly. If you're trying to launch a club now on Clubhouse and you want to get to 1 million members, I don't know how many years that would take, or how many dollars and what you'd have to put into it. But the fact of the matter is, it's all about timing. And Ed, you're so correct on that. Paige, welcome to the stage. You're another great contributor to Clubhouse, and I know you run the club, Domain Club, as well.
Well, congratulations on the anniversary to Ed and Colin, Michelle, and Mimi and the whole team, and congratulations on the book. Of course, I'm partial to books, being that the best joke anyone ever made about my name is when they said, Paige, I've got you read like a book. Ha ha. Anyway, I want to thank you for the 3 things that I get from Startup Club. I get accountability. If I know I'm coming to Startup Club, like with the name game, I know I've got to have my game on. I've got to think about that during the week. If I'm doing my business and I said I'm going to rebrand and come up with a name, and I know that I'm going to be sharing it with other people on the name game, I think there's a level of accountability you get in Startup Club. I think there's resources. You just truly never know who you're going to meet. And then I'm just amazed at the encouragement that people give to everybody to say, yeah, you're on the right track. Keep going, keep doing it. So, anyway, I've appreciated Startup Club and all these sessions. So, thank you.
Yeah, and I know I've been a victim of your name game. It's every Wednesday at 6 o'clock or
You got it.
five
You got
o'clock,
it.
6 o'clock. Okay, 6 o'clock. Yeah, because that's not a good hour for me. So, I've been able to jump in and play the game and with our incubator. And here you go. Here's an example of yourself. You do it with Jeff Sass, and you do it with the late, what's her name again? Your co-moderator?
Sharon.
Sharon. That's right.
Sharon
Cognac.
Cognac. I'm sorry.
Cognac. Sharon
Yeah,
Cognac.
I
Yeah.
got to hit my button. It doesn't do
Yeah.
any good if I don't hit the
I
button.
know. So you go on stage and they give you all this great advice, and they sharpen your story and your name, and talk about the domain name and how you can protect it, and like it's just amazing what you give in that panel, and it's actually a lot of fun too. So I've played it like 8 times. I admit. I
Well,
don't
and
know.
we hear some great stories too. I mean, we have people turning, I think someone's turning like rice into solar energy or something like that. And, I mean, whether it's energy or climate or fashion or design or apps or just all kinds of solutions globally, we hear from just fascinating people. So I encourage, I mean, I'm not hyping the show, but you never know when someone else's idea prompts you to work on your idea in a different way. And so, yes, you put your name up and we guess what we think you do, but then you do get a chance to practice your pitch. And I think it's been beneficial for a lot of people.
Absolutely, and I've enjoyed it as well a lot. All right, Michelle. Any other questions?
Well, this has been an amazing look forward and backwards of what the Startup Club has done. And again, we can't thank the members enough for your support, for tuning in, for joining, for passing the word along. And we're so super excited to bring Colin's book to everyone, every member. And we're going to be doing some very cool promotions that will allow you to get the book at very good prices, electronically or hard copy, whatever it is. We're going to be sharing a lot of the content as we ramp up to the actual launch date, which is October 3rd, but we are having big pre-sale events before then. So, if you're interested in participating, we're asking nothing from you. We just need your email. So you can go to startup.club and join that email list, and you'll be sure to have these offers. And we're super excited, and we're so thankful for everyone who's joined.
Yeah, and we use that list really to announce speakers. I know Paul Hutchinson's coming on to do his epic session around. He's the not a hedge fund manager, he's a real estate manager, $50 billion real estate manager, or 43 billion, whatever it was. And he actually did 47 undercover missions for the U.S. governments. And I'm telling you, I've already talked to him, and we've talked to him, Michelle and Mimi and I, in the initial interview, and it's just absolutely fascinating the stories he has and that he's going to talk about. And he's going to have a session on giving back and share a lot of those stories. They're doing a Hollywood movie about him that's coming out called something of honor, Sound of Honor. I'll have to get the name for you, but it's coming out this summer, and it looks absolutely amazing, the movie, and he does some great work. So if you want to know about the date he's coming on, we don't actually have the date booked. I know. Do we, Mimi, have the actual date booked yet? But if you want to know that date, get on that email list, and we'll send you an email the week it comes out. Because it really is, when we get these big speakers, they sometimes they'll come on like a few days before or whatever, or tell us they'll do it, and then we bring them on, and if unless you're on the mailing list, you're going to miss out. Well, I wanted to sort of end here with the reason I wrote the book, and it's the very last part of the acknowledgments after I talk about Ed and how great he is, and Mimi and Michelle and all the other people as well. It is my hope that one day both my kids, Kirsten and Quinn, will pick this book up and learn from it as much as I have learned from all those who've contributed to the book. I know that sounds odd, but I've had that in my mind since I started working on this book, and my kids were about, at that time, they would have been about 12 and 10. Now they're just finishing college. So it's good timing. But the fact of the matter is, I often also joke with my daughter. My son says he's got to listen to it. Just give me the audio version. I want the audible. My daughter, I often joke and say, okay, you'll read it when I'm dead, right? No, Dad, I'll read it. I know everything. I can do this. She's the one who launched Poem AI, and she's going for her master's in AI management. So she seems to have all the answers and know everything, but it's a lot cheaper. I think somebody else has said that here earlier, it's a lot easier, a lot cheaper, and you can go a lot faster if you can learn from the lessons from those in this community of Clubhouse, but also from the lessons in this book. And we go into detail, and we really cover a lot from start, scale, exit, take some money off the table, repeat. This has been a great show. We'll see everybody next week on the Serial Entrepreneur Secrets Revealed. You've been listening to my co-moderators, Mimi Ostrander, who writes the articles and blogs, Michelle Van Tilburg, and I'm Colin C. Campbell. Thank you very much for listening. Great to have you, Julian, Don, nice to see you, Kyle, El Normo, Steph, Noel, awesome to see you, Todd. And for those who came on stage, really appreciate that as well. Next week, 2 o'clock Eastern, set your clocks. It's going to be another episode 101. We're going to have some fun next week.